And welcome to today's session, Improving Efficiency and Customer Experience with a DAM. Just to start off with a little bit of housekeeping, we will be recording today's session and sharing the slides by email tomorrow. We're also going to save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, so please make use of that Q&A bar to add in any questions that you have throughout the webinar. I am Carly Hill. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing at Media Valley, and today I am stepping in for Brona O'Connor, our VP of Marketing. I am so thrilled to be joined by our guest speaker, Fernando Pena, Principal Analyst at Forrester. Fernando comes to us today with over 25 years of experience in digital marketing, marketing technology, and product management across multiple different industries and different company sizes. Thank you so much, Fernando, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we have a jam-packed webinar for you today covering all things DAM and all things MarTech. We'll start by taking you through some of the trends that we're seeing in MarTech and how they're impacting expectations for marketers who are either buying or approving technology. Next, we'll show a step-by-step approach for creating your ideal MarTech stack and the essential pieces to cover. Finally, we'll share some insights into digital asset management and share how Fred Rogers Productions is using DAM to improve the accessibility, discoverability, and shareability of decades of video content. All right, let's get started.
Thanks so much. And as Carly mentioned, my name is Fernando Pena, and I'm a principal analyst at Forrester. I focus on marketing technology and marketing operations, for that matter, with my history in digital technology and just marketing in general. I really feel at home speaking about MarTech trends and just anything marketing technology. So what I'd like to do today is to go over where MarTech trends are taking us these days. Now, the first thing is, what is a trend? So if we go by a dictionary type of description, we get a lot of different definitions. So we get a line of direction or a movement, general movement, prevailing tendency, and a number of different types of definitions. But really what we're looking at here and what we're most concerned with is a general movement over time or statistical detectable change. So why is this so important for a marketer? And why should we care about trends? And it's not so much that trends are about the latest tool or trying to remain in front of whatever technology or trend is out there, but really it's about trying to match what the expectations are for a customer and maybe even what the competition is doing. So what we have here in this slide is really three different areas of concern, which is opportunity, preference, and relevance. And we're looking at it from a customer perspective. Really what we're trying to accomplish here is to keep up with buyer demands for digital engagement. So a number of different industries out there have really made some tremendous strides in improving the customer experience. And now customers do have a certain expectation out there. And really what it is that you want to make sure that within your industry and the experience that you're providing, you are trying to meet or exceed that expectation. From a company perspective, you're trying to improve that experience through enablement, productivity, and automation. And so all of this really comes together by the way of technology. And by using technology properly, you're able to not only improve that customer experience, but also improve those efficiencies internally and to make your company that much more productive and also that much more able to meet those new expectations that are coming from customers. And finally, the competition. So the competition is obviously going to be very intense. And if anything, it's getting a lot worse out there in terms of how many competitors can come to a market, given the fact that technology has made that so much more accessible. But really what you're trying to accomplish here is to outpace that competition through modern, agile connections. And why that's important is because when you build these connections with your customers, they're looking at you as an expert or maybe a subject matter type of description there or expert that is able to really help them with their needs and help them to provide that experience that they're looking for. Now, this proactive hyper-relevance, it's really not the new baseline. In reality, this type of focus on the customer experience has existed long before digital. If you think about the old days, and I'll put those in quotes, where salespeople would speak with individual buyers and individual customers alike, they oftentimes did their research ahead of time. And what they did then was to really try to hone in on exactly what is the need or what is the challenge that this buyer has, and how can I meet that with my product or service. And so in doing so, now the buyer journey is obviously very much digitally enabled these days. So what we're trying to do is to mimic that old way of trying to provide that very personalized experience, but doing so now with these digital touch points as well as human touch points. So what you're looking at here on the left side of this slide is the typical buyer journey, where they, let's say, search for a product or service online. They visit the company website. Now they might chat with an agent, read an analyst review, maybe meet with a channel representative on site. All of this is very data rich. And so what we're doing is that we're attempting to capture all these touch points so that we can feed them into our technology and try to make use of that insight and provide a much more enhanced experience for customers or for buyers. Now, once they become customers, then you have some similar touch points as well, where maybe they join an online community, attend a user group, an online forum for support. Maybe they also saw an ad too to try to cross-sell products. So again, you're capturing all this information as best as you can, and you're then trying to make use of that so that you can provide even more enhanced experiences for those customers, and also provide them with recommendations for products or services that are going to be likely to really resonate with that audience. So with all of these great capabilities and all these new features that are out there, marketing technology, as we've observed, it continues to grow. So we're always doing surveys and really analysis and assessments of what's taking place in the market within Forrester. So we did a survey back in between 2021 and 2022. And what we determined here is that marketing investments, even in economies where it appears that revenue is down and maybe there's not a lot of investments available for technology, what we're finding is that our customers are actually prioritizing those spends. So in 21, we saw that 16% of our clients ended up increasing their marketing technology budgets by at least 10%. And in 22, we're finding that that increased substantially to 23%. And our initial assessments right now is that we're finding that technology investments are still top of mind and still very high priority. And the reason for that is because, as you just saw, these technologies are able to tailor that customer experience and really create opportunities for additional revenue or additional really cross-selling and other opportunities that customers and clients alike are looking for. And that those technology investments end up being very well received as a result of being able to potentially make back those investments as far as new revenue or additional growth that takes place within these organizations. So one of the other things that we've seen in our studies is that when marketing decision makers are increase their investments by more than 10%, we're finding that those companies that make these investments are 229% more, the companies that are succeeding are 229% more likely to make those over the greater than 10% investments than those companies that have flat or declining revenue. So clearly the leaders of the industries are finding that these technology investments are paying off dividends, and they're seeing success as a result of it. But now, of course, the question is that what technology do you need to invest in? And also, how do you do so effectively and making sure that it aligns with your priorities internally? MarTech expectations. So a lot of these technologies are pretty sizable investments, not all of them, but some are. And so there are very high expectations for what they can deliver to marketers. And so we have 5 different components here. And the first and top of mind here is understanding a buyer needs. And so this is critical because, as I mentioned before, you have a number of different touch points that are taking place. And each of these touch points leaves just a little bit of data that can be captured and collected by these organizations. So technology, really the expectation here is that it's going to help to drive further understanding of those buyer needs. There's also the expectation that these technologies should help with the ability to create and manage content. So content is critical in a digital type of environment. And what you're looking at here is that it is difficult to sometimes establish exactly what kind of content you need to create. So thankfully, technology has been created now that helps to guide any sort of analysts or articles or anything that has to be really created so that that customer could experience content that is relevant and timely for their needs. And that goes right into scaling personalization. So content is part of it, but really a truly personalized experience is unique to that buyer and unique to that experience. So this also spans outside of digital or other digital touch points other than the web. We traditionally think of personalization as maybe a hello, Mr. Such and such or Mrs. Such and such on a website, but really it goes way beyond that. It goes to a point where every single component within that experience has the possibility of being personalized. Better buyer experience. So we all sort of get frustrated by those ads that follow us for a product that we have already purchased, for example, or maybe something that's completely irrelevant just because we happen to search on it once. So technology should help to improve that buyer experience and really help to drive the organization that is using that technology to provide the right type of advertisement or the right type of offer to that individual so that they have that superior buying experience. And finally, better reporting and analytics. So this is key because, as mentioned before, there's just so much data being captured these days that in the past, the problem was access to data. Now the issue is access to too much data. So what you need is a tool that is able to sort of sift through all of the minutia and come back with actionable insights for whoever's making use of that tool. So better reporting and analytics is really important for anyone adopting new technologies, as now in this case, you're able to make better use of that information base being fed to you. So marketers do have very high expectations for tech investments, and they should. Bottom line is that these investments should provide the agility and the ability to align with market trends. And so again, these trends aren't something that in some cases, depending on the type of trend, it may not necessarily align with your industry or maybe really provide any value to your customers. But the bottom line is that in those cases where the trend is relevant to your buyers, you want to make sure that you're able to meet those expectations, and technology should help you enable that type of growth. So creating the ideal MarTech stack. Traditionally, what most organizations do is that they hear about some new technology and they decide, okay, we're going to get that. And so this is what we call technology first selection and deployment. What they do is they discover, whether it's at a conference or maybe a salesperson reaching out to you, you discover that this new technology is out there and you express interest in it. Now what you do is you sort of do some rudimentary research and you validate that this technology is well regarded in the industry. And oftentimes you look at features, you look at benefits, capabilities, and you decide this is what we want. So you purchase this technology and now you begin the deployment process. So the tech is dropped into your existing stack, and it's really done in a little bit of a silo. So you have the technology coming in. Maybe there's some basic integrations that take place, but for the most part, the tech is dropped in. And then at that point, you try to fit your existing processes to the technology. And once all is said and done, the deployment of that technology is actually the success criteria. So you go to the management and you say, okay, we deployed technology XYZ. And so that is our, we've crossed the finish line. We've accomplished what we've set out to do. The danger here is that unfortunately from a customer experience perspective, they're technology agnostic for the most part. They want a good experience. They don't really care what kind of technology they use. They just know that they want something that provides them with the experience they're looking for. So when you use this approach, what we find is that in our surveys, there's a lot of buyer's remorse. And so we're finding that 42% of B2B business marketing decision makers, they believe that they have either too much technology or not the right technologies. And so what they've established is that we've gone through this sort of haphazard method of bringing in new technologies. And unfortunately, in doing so, what we've discovered is that it's not really suiting our needs. So there's regret that unfortunately, this is something that we shouldn't have done. And if you think about the old movie from Indiana Jones, where you have all these different selections of chalices and you have to decide which one to select, you may end up in this position where you chose poorly. So ultimately, that's not what we want to do. And so here at Forrester, what we did is that we developed what we consider to be a more superior method of doing so. And that's really what we consider to be the value and technology-based approach, where technology is a key enabler for these goals. And so what we look for here is that for the buyer, we want to meet the audience expectations and have that consistent and meaningful engagement. For the company, and this goes back to something we talked about earlier, it's ensuring that we have better strategic investments to help improve efficiency, productivity, and accuracy. So I have guidance sessions with a lot of our clients, and essentially what we do is we talk about a lot of their challenges and how we can approach some of these challenges to try to address them. And one of the question that I get asked most frequently when I start to come back with, this is what we need to do to try to fix your tech stack is, okay, well, what vendors should be in my marketing technology stack? What components do I actually need? And unfortunately, I have to come back to them and I go and I give an ambiguous answer, and that's it depends. But I'm going to show you exactly why it is that I come back with that answer and how we can really get to the response that you're looking for. So we've created this framework called the outcome-focused technology approach. And what we do here is that we've broken it down into 5 different steps. The first one is that we have to identify business goals. After that, we establish functional objectives, align processes to the objectives, define your business requirements, and notice that for these first 4, we've not even touched upon technology yet. So it's a very different mindset than what a lot of companies do, where they just decide that, oh, I need such and such, and they roll it out and they find that maybe it's not completely suiting the needs of the organization. Instead, what we're looking at here is that really we need to do a thorough assessment of what are the needs and the gaps within the organization. We establish that, then we come up with the business requirements, and then finally we start to talk about technology at the end here. So really it's a value-based technology decision where it has to be tied to a business need. And that is where we find that there's a lot more success and a lot more value derived out of the technology when you sort of flip it, the decision-making process this way. So I'm going to go ahead and run through an example of what this looks like if we were to do it in a sort of real-world scenario. So we've identified business goals at a high level at just driving $50 million in upsell, cross-sell revenue. So fair enough, very sort of strategic type of outlook, not a lot of information behind that, but still from an organizational perspective, that's to be expected. Next, we established the functional objectives. So here we're looking at marketing. So we've broken it down just into 2 for the sake of simplicity. So we have marketing that wants to influence about 10 million in revenue from existing customers. And then sales needs to engage 80% of those existing customers and close about a quarter of them. For aligned processes to objectives, there's likely going to be a tremendous number of processes that align back to these objectives, but for the sake of simplicity, again, we're just showing 3 of them here. Examples are define target markets, attract and engage buying group members, and also qualify early stage opportunities. But again, there could be many more. And with business requirements, it's the same thing, where you could have potentially a number of them here, but here what we've done is that we've conducted outreach to identify potential opportunities and also managing SLAs and driving programs to engage buying groups. Finally, we do get to that technology decision. So now what we've done is that we've created a grid here, and this is, again, very simplified, but we have the requirements that are outlined, and then we also show different categories of technology. And so what we're demonstrating here is that there could be some overlap, and there could be maybe some very clear, distinct winners in terms of which categories are needed to be able to meet those expectations. And with this activity and this sort of action, then you're able to determine if you do have gaps, or maybe if you already have the technology available internally that is able to meet these expectations. So if we go back to that visual representation that I showed earlier, but instead we use the outcome-focused technology selection. So we go through the discovery phase just as we did before, but now instead we're more focused on the outcome first. That's really where it's more important, is what is this going to lead us towards in terms of outcome. Next, we validate. But here where it differs is that validation is aligned with the needs of that organization. So we have to make sure that there's very close tie-in and alignment between functionality and the needs for the company. And then we go through the purchase, but that purchase now is led by business requirements. When we get to the deployment part of it, that integration is part of a decision. So this is really important because in the past with the previous technology-focused approach, the technology oftentimes sits in a silo, but here it does need to become integrated so that you can have that complete view of a customer, and this technology can then impact a number of different channels, a number of different experiences, etc. So that it should be as impactful as possible. For fit, instead of trying to cram the technology into your existing or cram the technology and move your processes so that it aligns to technology, we instead decide here that the technology needs to fit the process. So again, a slightly different way of looking at things, but granted, this is an opportunity where if the process that you have internally is broken, this is an opportunity to fix that process. But if you are happy with the way things are going, then the technology really should fit into what you're doing and do so quite nicely. And then when we deploy, instead what we have is that we have specific KPIs that we've called out, and those KPIs, however they're impacted by this technology, should be judged as a success criteria. So the fact that we deployed this platform has really little relevance to our customers and our buyers, but instead it's those KPIs that we've determined from the beginning that we would like to impact positively. That's where we gauge success. So in essence, you have all the answers when it comes to that question that was asked before. You have to identify your organizational goals and objectives, inventory the platforms and technologies that you have now, and then you evaluate new solutions based on those customer expectations and the needs of your customer. So you don't really need the fortune teller, at least for your tech stack, but you can ask them anything else and hopefully they can help as they need to. Going back to the question that I'm always asked, so I still come back with that answer of it depends, but you need a strong foundation. And that is key, because really that foundation is going to help you establish that ability to service that customer all throughout every sort of experience, and do so in a way where it's very relevant and timely based on their needs and experiences. So what I'd like to do now is to go over the essential pieces of that MarTech stack. We're concerning ourselves here with 3 different verticals, and that's and obviously they should communicate amongst each other, but in some cases they don't, so that's why we keep them separate here. So we have sales, marketing, and customer success. Now what you'll see here on the left side is that audience engagement is comprised of 4 different pieces of this. So you've got data, analytics, orchestration, and delivery. And this is a model that feeds itself, which means that with each audience interaction, there is additional data that's coming in, and then it just sort of starts this whole cycle all over again. So how do you make this all happen? And that's we've determined that there's 6 essential pieces of technology that almost all emerging companies have in their tech stack right now. Now, these are very generally listed, and what you'll find is that sometimes there's some overlap, and then there's also some platforms that sort of cover all the bases here. But you're looking at a Salesforce automation tool is critical, sales intelligence, marketing analytics, marketing automation, sales engagement, and content management. Now, again, these are generic categories. So within here, you're going to have a number of different solutions and sort of different terminology that's used for those solutions. Also, what you'll find too is that there's opportunities here to consolidate and really find platforms that offer multiple capabilities, and will cover most of these in just one platform and one sort of option. That rationalization to consolidate is something that is top of mind for a lot of decision makers. So what we found here is that in high growth companies, the technology decision makers are 50% more likely to prioritize consolidation. So what's happening is that using, again, that old model of selecting technology for the sake of selecting it, there's been a lot of purchases made of tech, whether it's something that is just coming in the forefront in terms of new and emerging technologies and people are interested in it, or maybe it's something where users are asking for a specific type of platform, but not really a rationalization for why they need it. So a lot of decisions have been made to acquire new technology. What we're finding here is that there's a real drive now to try to consolidate and come up with platforms that really provide multiple functions under one sort of suite. So what I wanted to do now is to touch upon one of the more important components in there. So digital asset management, and that's one that, although it's not called out specifically in the previous slide, it is something that is part of, and it impacts every single component within those six. So it's a big part of content management. It's also a big part of marketing automation. And the reason why is because content, again, does drive so much of that customer experience. And so what we're finding here is that with digital asset management, we are seeing that there's a lot of frustrations with the existing processes that are used today. There's inefficient and cumbersome sharing, decentralized storage. And with both of these, what we're finding is that a lot of platforms within their own category have a digital asset management repository. And that's fine if you're looking at just using assets within that singular platform. But in the world today, what we have are highly integrated scenarios where that marketing stack is sharing information all throughout. So these two become very cumbersome and inefficient as a result of having that decentralized storage. Ineffective search capabilities. So I'm guilty of this one where I don't know what to call an asset, for example. So when I was running marketing teams in the past, I would maybe call something generically and then I'd never find it again. So I'd have to then repurpose a different asset or come up with something completely new. Now with these new tools, what they offer is a lot of sort of tagging and AI enabled capabilities to help with searching. Version control, that's one that a lot of managers of content have issues with, just multiple versions floating throughout. Security, that's paramount, of course. Any brand is tarnished the moment that there's a security intrusion. And so even with content, something as simple as an asset of some sort, if that security is not really followed thoroughly, that could become a liability. And then finally, integration across channels. So digital, of course, is where most content exists, but you'll also find that it's shared all throughout the number of different channels and a number of different touch points. In our studies, what we found is that 66% of firms are in the process of either adopting or planning to adopt a new digital asset management platform. So that's just demonstrating that what the first generation of digital asset management platforms, although they function perfectly well for that time, we're seeing that the new generation that are a lot more sophisticated and really offer a lot more functionality are attractive to companies. And that's the reason that they're looking to consider moving on to something new. So with these new platforms, there's a tremendous amount of versatility. And so what you'll find now is that the leading DAMs offer function or capabilities such as centralized repositories. So these are repositories that essentially can be shared all throughout, regardless of the tool. Now you have one repository that handles all of these assets and makes it much easier for any users to really access what the content that they might be looking for. Native integrations with API options. So I remember the days that having to integrate anything required a custom developer, required a tremendous amount of resources and energy just to get two systems to communicate together. Now with native integrations, it's simple enough for just a system administrator to tie these two together, but also there's the API option in case you do have legacy systems or systems that may not necessarily be as popular, but still need to get integrated as they're a part of your tech stack. And then I touched upon this before. This is a feature I really love as well, where sophisticated search with AI-enabled features. And that's where the AI is actually taking a look at the assets. And so, for example, with imagery, it's able to tag those images with what it finds to be the most the traits that are best describe those assets. So instead of having someone try to take the time to come up with that description on their own, these systems are able to do it themselves. Comprehensive reporting and analytics, critical, because as I mentioned before, just the abundance of data makes it very difficult to determine exactly where things need to go. So here with these insight-driven analysis tools, it presents the most important key data to you and provides actionable inputs. And then asset protection and control. So this aligns with our security challenge and concern from before, but really you're looking at the ability to control access, ability to control visibility, and also just protecting those assets so that only those that are able to can make modifications, edits, or even distribute those. So our final metric here is that we have a 48% of B2B companies, they are planning on evaluating or replacing their existing digital asset management platform. So almost half of our clients who surveyed, and this is very recent, it's in 2022, are finding that these new capabilities are really well suited for where they need to go in terms of their overall objectives, and also to meet those KPIs that they would like to address. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it back over to Carly, and she will show an example of how digital asset management platforms are able to work in the real world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fernando. I think a lot of people on the call today can really take value from the different insights and approaches that you've shared to really help build a MarTech stack that's going to work for them. So as he mentioned, I really wanted to wrap up today's presentation with a use case from one of our amazing customers, Fred Rogers Productions. Many of you, I'm sure, will recognize the cast of the world-renowned Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or maybe some of you with younger kids may also recognize the tiger in the corner from the more recent series, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. So Fred Rogers Productions is a relatively small nonprofit that started back in 1971, which was soon after Fred Rogers began writing, producing, and starring in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The goal of the nonprofit is really to carry forward Mr. Rogers' values with a focus on innovation, as well as staying at the forefront of what's new in media to help children to better explore the world in an age-appropriate way. The company has a massive portfolio and currently has 7 series, which add up to a little bit over 1,100 episodes that they have available in nearly 200 different countries. They've also won 2 Peabody Awards and 28 Daytime Emmys with those episodes. They have 4 live stage shows, 10 mobile apps, 60 online games, hundreds of community engagement programs, an amusement park ride, a children's museum exhibit, and countless licenses. So as you can imagine, they have a ton of content. So looking at their goals, Fred Rogers Productions was storing their assets on a legacy solution that really just wasn't efficient, it wasn't stable, and it wasn't scalable. On top of that, there were huge IT costs that were associated with the platform. They really needed a more feature-rich DAM that could effectively and efficiently connect their staff with their assets, specifically their mass amounts of video content. They wanted their new DAM to be more than just a storage house. They really wanted something that would allow them to truly capture the value of their content and maximize the ROI of their assets. So with this in mind, they had 3 main goals. First, they really wanted to enhance their video search experience to enable their team to be able to access and find specific episodes, as well as find exact video clips within each of those episodes quickly and easily. Second, they wanted to provide more robust distribution options to allow their team to more securely share full-length, high-definition episodes, as well as those exact video clips, as well as other assets such as images and documents in a really streamlined as well as on-brand way. And third, they wanted to develop a partnership with an innovative solution provider that would continually evolve and enable them to grow long-term. So today, all of their episodes from their current and their archived shows are managed in MediaValet, along with their associated images and documents. They've opened up access to the entire organization, and they're starting to address different use cases across their unique and various teams. So as mentioned, Fred Rogers Productions really had a focus on improving the discoverability of their assets. In the context of DAM, really this means leaning into AI, as well as tagging each asset with relevant information. So for them, that meant character names, locations, usage rights, etc. Video intelligence, or AVI for short, is a MediaValet feature that's extremely useful to Fred Rogers Productions given their extensive video library. The intelligence engine processes their videos to recognize and tag objects, places, actions. It can even recognize people, which is pretty amazing. It creates a transcript of every word of dialogue that's spoken as well, which can then be translated into over 60 languages and used as subtitles. What's even more helpful to the team is the fact that these features are time-stamped, meaning that the team can pinpoint exact moments in the episode where, for example, Daniel Tiger might sing a particular song or the infamous trolley is present. It significantly reduces the time required for staff to find video content, both in terms of individual episodes, as well as those exact moments where a certain word, phrase, or person appears. These capabilities have been invaluable for Fred Rogers Productions, especially their social media team, who regularly creates new clips to use across their various social media platforms. Before implementing ABI, searching for clips would be an incredibly long, incredibly manual process. Now, the social media team is able to find those clips just by searching for a specific phrase. The transcription capabilities also removed an entire workflow for the Fred Rogers team. Prior to having Media Valet in place, they would need to manually upload the different transcripts and sync them with each episode. This process, again, was incredibly frustrating, and it also typically resulted in about a 5-second delay with the subtitles. Today, this entire process is automated and handled by the DAM, and it syncs beautifully. In addition to their video content, they're also using the DAM to make their images and other content more discoverable as well. They shared a story with me that I think really highlights the power of search and how it's really allowing them to drive efficiency. So one day their licensing team came to their DAM manager and said, "Hey, we're creating a new puzzle book and we'd really like a fresh image that includes both King Friday and Mr. Rogers. And if possible, we'd also love to have him wearing a purple sweater." So that might sound like an easy task, but there are over 900 episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And with that, there's close to 3,000 or 4,000 images of Mr. Rogers. On top of that, each of those images have very specific rights for which types of products they could be used in. So in the world before DAM, this would have been an impossible task, or at the very least, an incredibly inefficient one. With Media Valet in place, they were able to execute this request with just a simple search for Fred Rogers, purple sweater, and King Friday, followed by a really easy filter to find which assets were licensable. They were quickly able to share that asset with the licensing team, and they produced this puzzle book that's shown here. The other goal that Fred Rogers Productions was trying to achieve was the ability to better distribute their content. Today, Fred Rogers Productions makes use of the DAM's various sharing features, such as web galleries and direct links, to provide a more seamless experience for its staff, as well as those partners, stakeholders, sponsors who are actually receiving those assets. So whether it's a single image or a collection of full-length episodes, everyone is able to share their content without any constraints. One sharing feature that they lean really heavily on is branded portals, which are essentially branded microsites that are typically used for external content sharing. So things like campaign content, or some people use them for media kits. Sharing content using branded portals ensures that all assets are automatically updated as new versions are added to the DAM. Unique to Media Valet is also the ability to sync a DAM category to a branded portal, meaning that every time Fred Rogers Productions adds a new asset to a specific category in their library, it's automatically added to the associated branded portal. This feature saves them a ton of time, especially as new episodes and characters are added for the shows that are currently in production. One really unique way that they're using branded portals is to actually enable their licensing agents that work on the road. So for example, they could have a licensing agent at a toy fair that's speaking to someone about Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. So before Media Valet, they could speak to it, they could share a still image, but with Media Valet in place, the licensing agent is able to pull up everything on their iPad and immediately access a full gallery of high definition episodes and clips. They can show imagery and really show the various characters in different situations. It really makes a bigger impact and helps the agent to better connect people with the story that they're trying to tell. Their last goal was to find a vendor that they could partner with for the long haul. Fred Rogers Productions shared that one of the biggest learnings that they took from their own DAM journey was the importance of really understanding your own use case and what you're actually trying to achieve with the DAM. When you have that clarity, you can better find a vendor that truly understands your use case and then you can articulate how they've addressed those use cases in the past. They also really emphasize the importance of finding a vendor that you feel that you can partner with. A DAM journey is very rarely a straight path, so having a vendor that's really in your corner and is ready and willing to help can really be the difference in actually achieving your DAM goals. So this was really just a sneak peek of how Fred Rogers Productions is using a DAM to unlock the value of their incredible video archive. You can read their full story in our case study, which we'll be sharing in our follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that tomorrow. All right, thank you so much, Fernando, for taking the time to share your valuable insights with us today. And thank you everyone for taking the time to join and learn more about how you can improve the efficiency, and customer experience with the right MarTech stack and DAM. Just before we jump into the Q&A, I wanted to run a really quick poll. If DAM is a top priority for you, please raise your hand in this poll and we can reach out to you directly. All right, I'm just going to give a few moments for you to fill this in. Okay, perfect. All right, up next, we're going to take some time to answer a few questions. So let's jump right in. All right, so first question is, what are the must-have pieces of tech for every marketing tech stack going into 2023? Fernando, do you think you can take that one?
Sure. So we touched upon some of this during the six different categories of technology that are needed within the tech stack. So I would basically align with that slide. But what I'll do is expand a little bit more into exactly the types of emerging technologies that could be used, and a lot of that is really going to center around AI capabilities. So we saw here in the Fred Rogers Productions example where a dam with AI capabilities just adds a completely new dimension to what was traditionally a very laborious task of identifying and tagging different assets. So I would also add that there's other opportunities where AI-enabled capabilities really help when it comes to driving efficiency and additional productivity. So I would look at those 6 different technology pieces, but I would also evaluate some of the next generation capabilities that are available in the industry today, and make sure that you keep those top of mind, as they will add just a tremendous amount of benefit to you and your organizations.
Perfect. All right, the next question. Are there specific objectives that I can highlight to get a DAM project prioritized? I'm happy to take that on, and if you have any extra insights, you can definitely add those on as well.
Sure.
From my perspective, definitely tying it back to revenue is super helpful, or really the bottom line. What I have seen useful with people getting their DAM project prioritized is really tying it back to that time saved element, and specifically what you can do with that extra time that actually meets those bottom line priorities. So some examples that I've seen is a franchise that really had a lot of back and forth that they would need to go through with their franchisees to make sure that that the elements that they were making were consistent with the brand. So with getting something like a media valet in place, they were able to eliminate that, where they had access to on-brand assets, and that process was shortened significantly. Another one I've seen was a higher ed client where it was their creative team that was using the DAM. And she actually took it on herself, where she timed how much time in a given week she was spending looking for assets. And what came out of that was, between her and her team, they were actually spending 8 hours a week looking for assets. So they were able to go back and say, we are spending a day just finding assets. And that could be time that's spent towards making more creative, helping move projects forward. So that was able to help them get it prioritized. So really taking what is the time that you can save and what can you be doing with that time to help move the business forward, I find is a really impactful conversation to have.
One other thing I'll add too, and this is a little harder to quantify, but it is a definite asset to have on your side, and that is that undiscovered opportunities. And what I mean by that is that if you think about the fact that it was so inefficient in the past before a dam to discover what assets you had, so you may have then hesitated when it came to creating content that was a little bit more media rich in nature. Now with a dam, on the other hand, you have the ability to discover what you have in your portfolio and your assets, and really make use of them more extensively than you did in the past. So again, that metric is a little harder to quantify, because you're now taking into account opportunities that previously were really unfulfilled or unrealized, but it still is something that can really help to sort of tell the story and make that business case for why this is a valuable addition to your MarTech stack.
Awesome, thanks, Fernando.
Sure.
All right, next question is, how can I get new tech approved during budget cuts?
That's always a challenge, and it's so one of the things to really keep in mind here is that ROI is not the singular measurement of the success or not having success of a platform. There's a number of other KPIs that can also be evaluated. So really, what you want to look at is where that platform is going to have the most impact. So it might be maybe cost avoidance. It might be a reduction of expenses. It could be potentially reduction of headcount. account. I mean, that is still an expense. So it's a matter of taking a look at other opportunities aside from just a generation of revenue and using that as part of your business case, and doing so in a way where it's almost undeniable that this platform is going to help this and the organization meet this particular challenge or this KPI that has been set forth by management. So it's really taking a look outside of the box. And that's something where at Forrester, we do help with that type of questions. So that is something that we have some frameworks and we've established some best practices around as well.
Amazing. All right. And I think this is another good one for you. And that's, how can I balance competing priorities when aligning tech to business goals?
And that is an important one, as most companies have just multiple priorities that are 100% necessary and now. So really what you'll want to do is that we do have, again, a framework at Forrester where you're able to outline the investments that you're making in a certain technology and also the capabilities that you're seeking. Then you're also able to grade that and score it and determine what type of impact it has on your organization. So at the end, you come back with essentially a quadrant, and it demonstrates to you that these technologies maybe need to be further invested. Maybe these need to just sit in the state that they're currently in, and maybe some others need to be divested. So there really is just, there's 4 different categories to look at. And really what you're trying to do is to determine where should you spend all of your time and where are you going to have the most impact. So again, we do have tools for that, but it is something where it's likely to become a more pressing issue as our economies become a little bit more revenue and budgets become a little bit more restrictive, and something that we could help at when it comes to that type of question and figuring out the best way to maneuver through that challenge.
Awesome. Perfect. And then the next one I think probably makes the most sense for me to take on.
Mhm.
And that is, how do I know if I need a digital asset management solution? So, I mean, speaking to Fernando, it really depends. But generally speaking, there's kind of 3 main pillars that we see that really kickstart people looking into a DAM more seriously. And it aligns really well to Fred Rogers' production story. And that is accessibility, searchability, and discoverability. So when it comes to accessibility, a lot of people will be using, hard drives, on-premise solutions. So really trying to get their assets into a place where everyone can get them from anywhere in the world is a big major driver. Another one in terms of accessibility is actually, I'm going to call it reducing the accessibility. So people that are using file management solutions, but it's really an all or nothing. So they have their entire organization that can choose whether they want to delete an asset, if they want to add an asset. So it really just becomes a bit of a mess, for lack of a better word. So they're really looking for a solution that can better enable them to tailor those user groups so that, marketing has a certain view, sales has a certain view. Depending on what your job function is, you can perform certain actions. So really looking to tailor in on what users can do within their asset library. The last component of the accessibility piece is that security piece that Fernando mentioned. So really getting your assets somewhere where they're going to be secure from, I'm going to call it disaster, whether that's accidental, so someone deleting an entire folder of assets, or disaster in terms of maybe a natural disaster or when people went home for COVID and suddenly no one had access to any of their files anymore. So really just opening up that accessibility. The next component of that is the discoverability piece. So I think Fernando hit it on really well. So really opening up the ability to take advantage of AI to add those additional elements so you can really customize what your view is and take advantage of additional search capabilities and search filters that come with a DAM solution. And the last piece as well is that the distribution piece. So giving those additional sharing options so that people aren't relying on things like WeTransfer, or we literally had some customers where the process was put a video on a hard drive, put that hard drive in a box and mail it to someone. So really streamlining that process for sharing, and sharing in a way that's more on brand and more reflective of their business. So those are kind of the main 3 pillars that I would say really encourage people to take a look at if DAM is a better solution for them. All right, we have a question that's specifically for you, Fernando.
Okay.
And that is, how would your process be different for nonprofits that aren't marketing something but are service organizations?
So there, more than likely, budgets are going to be a little bit more strict in most nonprofits. So what you're looking at there is to try to, again, come up with the business case and the story about how much time saving and efficiency you have as a result of leveraging this certain type of platform. So there's the last thing that a nonprofit wants to do is to spend an inordinate amount of time on very manual tasks. Instead, you want to be very strategic and very sort of value based in terms of every action that takes place. So if you're finding that a process is very inefficient and cumbersome, a technology platform is going to make a great business case when it comes to improving that and also helping to potentially make use of fewer resources to accomplish the same level of work. I'd also look at the different grades of technology solutions. So we're in a time now where these hosted solutions and SaaS-based services are much less expensive than they used to be in the old days where you had to host solutions in your own facility. So instead now you're able to make use of the same solutions that a corporate entity might use, but just do so at a smaller scale. And so that's certainly an option to look at as well. So there's a lot of opportunity. It's just framing it so that you can make sure that it's really showing the benefits to that organization.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. It looks like those are all the questions that we have coming through. If you jump off the webinar and you realize you do have a question, no worries, just email me directly and we will do our best to answer those questions for you. Besides that, thank you so much again, Fernando, and thank you to all of our listeners. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carly.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.